really didn't expect it to last this long.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Bob Newhart. His career spanned 7 decades, from stand-up to sitcoms.
Honey, I'm home.
And the big screen.
There's something I probably should tell you.
How he went from an accountant
It's unusual for a good accountant to become a comedian.
to a Hollywood legend,
And there were times when I thought to myself, boy, you really screwed up your life.
changing American culture with comedy.
I'm never going to see another psychologist, not even socially.
Stories you never knew about Bob,
They were trying out host, and I was a blithering idiot.
and the blind date turned love of his life.
I wanted to be treated like a star, but she wouldn't have any of that.
His legacy in his own words.
What I get more and more now is thank you for all the years of laughter, and my answer is the truth. It was my pleasure.
CBS presents Bob Newhart, A Legacy of Laughter, an Entertainment Tonight special. Honoring the incomparable Bob Newhart. Welcome, everybody. I'm Nichelle Turner. He was a master of comedy, a respected actor, a trailblazer, but the thing about Bob is he never needed a script to be funny. He was just naturally brilliant at getting a laugh, especially when it was off the cuff.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
If I had a choice, I think I would come back as my wife. I mean, to be able to spend every day with me, how much better can it get, you know?
What's the secret to looking like you do and being as talented as you are at 88 years old?
Plastic surgery.
He just embodies the joy of what we get to do. He was just always wonderful and always happy.
This is not a toy. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Pilot to bombardier, pilot to bombardier.
How do you account for the fact that not just once, but twice you have had long-running, successful TV series?
America loves me.
Well, I mean, I am a television personality. It's only natural that I would attract a certain number of fans.
With his deadpan delivery and trademark stammer, Bob Newhart turned the role of the comedy straight man into a bona fide art form.
How you doing?
Okay, except I throwed my back out last week crawling under a house.
Sounds like a tough job.
Wasn't a job, I just like crawling under houses.
Bob Newhart came to do an episode of NCIS. Who are you?
My name is Magnus.
You know, your heart really is just racing when that happens, and you have to remember to stay in the scene because he needs an acting partner. You can't just be a fanboy.
You know, you're not going to be a quarterback, and you're not going to be on the basketball team, but you made guys laugh, and you became somebody. It was important to become somebody.
Ladies and gentlemen, we proudly welcome to the Walk of Fame, Mr. Bob Newhart. Bobby, there it is.
I'm reminded of a story. I'm reminded... Oh, they're onto me, I guess.
Have you always written most of your stuff, Bob?
Yeah, I could.
Haven't
When I
you?
first started out, I couldn't afford anybody.
Right.
You know, so I had to write it myself. And I've written 95% of it. I mean, that's the real kick, is getting the germ of an idea and then going with it, and then going out on stage and trying it and having it work. That's the fun.
Stand-up, movies, television, Bob did it all. But before he was an award-winning A-lister, Bob was a not-so-mild-mannered accountant with a dream.
People say to me, "Were you really an accountant?" And I really was, because, you know, why would you lie about something like that? I worked as an accountant and just decided one day I was just going to give this a try. And then for 4 years, nothing happened. And then a disc jockey friend of mine in Chicago, Dan Sorkin, invited the Warner Brothers people to listen to some material I'd written. And they said, "Okay, we'll record it at your next nightclub." And I said, "Well, we got kind of a problem there because I've never played a nightclub." And they said, "Well, we'll have to book you into a nightclub." So they booked me into a club in Houston, Texas, called the Tidelands.
Right now, ladies and gentlemen, Bob Newhart.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I went down there for 2 weeks, worked on a nightclub for the first time in my life. Terrified, out of my mind, but realized that if you show fear of any kind, you're dead. So with much bravado and fear, I walked out and recorded the album, which then proceeded to go to #1.
Listen, Abe, I got the note. What's the problem? You're thinking of shaving it off. Abe, don't you see that's part of the image? Right, with the shawl and the stovepipe at the string tie.
Yes, Bob was a pioneer of the stand-up comedy special. His first 2 records won him 3 Grammys. In 1961, it was the first time a comedy album won Album of the Year, beating out Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra, and the only time a comedian has ever won Best New Artist.
My first album went to #1. Then my second album went to #2. Then the second album went to #1, and the first album went to #2. And that record was broken by Guns N' Roses.
That success led to Bob's first steady television gig, The Bob Newhart Show. No, not this one.
Hello?
This one.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised to have my own show, too.
The 1961 variety show only lasted for a season. It would be another decade before Bob's groundbreaking sitcom of the same name brought his brand of comedy to a wider audience.
This is Dr. Robert Hartley. Yeah, could you tell me the balance in my checking account? $47? Could you tell me how I'd go about stopping payment on about 16 checks?
What do you think was really made this show work for 6 seasons?
I think it was respect for our audience. I think we respected their intelligence.
The series featured Bob as a psychologist living in his own hometown of Chicago, with Suzanne Plachette being the perfect counterpoint as his wife, Emily.
Gee, you know, Bob, all of a sudden you're so strong and impulsive.
You're darn right, Emily.
Yeah, I think I liked you better the other way.
I was a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, because I think a psychiatrist deals with much more serious problems. And I said, I don't want any schizophrenic jokes. I don't want any split personality jokes. And we tried to stay away from that. We worked with groups, that were people that were paranoid or maybe neurotic at the most, because I didn't want to get our humor from that, and I don't think we did.
When I gave him his college graduation present, he hit me with it. What'd you give him? A Pontiac.
Why does it have such enduring appeal?
A great cast to begin with, the chemistry of the cast, and great writing.
Right.
And then a star who takes all the credit for it.
Did he take the credit for everything?
You are so cute. Never did. He never did.
No.
Never.
It was a true ensemble.
Ranked one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, The Bob Newhart Show has been called quietly revolutionary. The show helped legitimize therapy as a practice in the 1970s and featured a couple who slept in the same bed but didn't have children.
Until we have a family of our own, substitute teaching is a good way for me to keep busy.
If you get any busier, we won't have time for it.
One of the secrets behind the show's long-term success, Bob had the foresight to make sure the humor was timeless.
I got this finished by the time I get through the checker counter.
Oh, that's stealing.
No, stealing is when you walk out with it. When you eat it here, it's called snacking.
I said to the writers, I said, this show's going to be syndicated. All shows are syndicated. So let's not do any topical jokes, We're going to look pretty silly in 15 years doing President Ford tripping jokes. And we avoided that. And I see it on some shows, that it becomes very dated.
Hi, honey. Well, of course it's every Monday. That's why it's called Monday Night Football.
Bob also employed a bit he perfected during his stand-up days, his famous one-sided phone conversation. It's how the first episode of the series began.
Mrs. Harold, we've been over this before, and as you said yourself, you overeat because having a beautiful body you feel threatens you. Well, I'm happy to hear you've been able to control it. Mrs. Harold? Yeah, I can't understand you with your mouth full.
One of the show's greatest assets, according to Bob, the live studio audience. Bob hated laugh tracks.
Well, I found the problem today, and not to put down the programs today, but they don't do them in front of a live audience. And we always did it in front of a live audience, where the material was judged, so the writing was better, and the actors reacted more to the live audience.
At the height of its popularity, the Bob Newhart Show even spawned a drinking game. The rules are simple. You take a sip every time you hear someone say Bob. Take a shot when you hear, "Hi, Bob."
Hey, Bob.
Hello, Bob.
Bob.
Bob. Hi, Bob.
Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Oh, I've never played it, no. But I've heard various rules for it. But if you play it, don't go out driving after you played Hi, Bob.
The cast remained close throughout their lives and reunited to celebrate the show's 19th anniversary in 1991.
Bob had this silly dream. It wasn't silly. It was very real. It was almost like I lived it.
It isn't just a cast getting together, it's friends, and we've stayed friends over the years. So we were portraying real people. We weren't cartoons, and I think people could identify with, and I think people like to watch real people. When I look back, I remember those people and how much fun we had, and they're gone.
Up next, how Bob created one of the most memorable moments in TV history with the help of his wife, Jenny. Plus, Lisa Kudrow, Betty White, and Jason Bateman.
Yeah, bye-bye now. It's not bad.
Behind the scenes with Bob and his famous co-stars.
Do you wear makeup all the time at home?
Yeah.
Good for you. I'll see you later.
Cannot stand her.
My favorite story is the one that of the man who wanted you were running a little long on the old Bob Newhart show.
Oh, and the very first year of the Bob Newhart show with Susie, the show was running a little long, and we needed about to take 2 minutes out of the script. And they came up to me and they said, would you mind running your speeches together? Because it would really help us. And I said, well, the stammer has gotten me a home in Beverly Hills, and I'm not about to change it now.
No.
Bob Newhart never expected to hit it big in television, but 4 years after saying goodbye to psychologist Bob Hartley, he was ready for a comeback as Dick Loudon on Newhart.
I've heard from every crackpot and loose screw in the county. Oh, your mother called.
I'm about 85% Bob Hartley, Dick Loudon, and as my kids will testify, and my wife, the other 15% is a very extremely sick man who should be put away, but is making too much money doing what he's doing, so the family's not about to commit him.
No.
The series about a Vermont innkeeper surrounded by a group of eccentric locals was a natural fit for Bob. He just had to get used to having a different TV wife.
I remember one time I called Mary Fran, I called her Emily instead of Joanna, and the audience just broke up.
But once again, Bob was the straight man with plenty of opportunities for his signature one-sided phone conversations.
No, I'm sorry, we don't accept pets. We do accept children, yes.
Going into this series, I sat down and tried to find what I thought were the reasons that the first series worked. And so I tried to take those same things that made that show successful and apply them to this, which was in the case of an inn, and the owner of an inn obviously can't say to a guest, "You're not get out of my hotel."
I'll tell you what, there's a very nice kennel in town. Well, you can call them, but I don't think they take people.
Who was the biggest prankster?
That would be
we just laughed. I mean, it was eight years of laughing.
We had a show last week where I was very mad at him, and I stormed to the bedroom closet to put my clothes away, and he had arranged for all this paraphernalia to fall out of the closet: handcuffs, whips, chains, everything. And I turned to the audience and said, and you're not getting any of that tonight either.
Is that 700? No.
In spite of its 25 Emmy nominations, the show never took home a trophy, but it was a hit with critics and audiences alike, running for 8 seasons and consistently charting among the top 25 shows on the air.
I think the women watch and they say, oh my God, that's exactly what Norm or Ted or Fred would do. And the men watch and they say, oh God, I would have done exactly the same thing, and thank God I'm watching it instead of being the person that's doing it.
Okay, that's it. I've heard enough out of you guys. Oh, yeah? Pretty much, yeah.
But it's the series finale in 1990 with a then unknown Lisa Kudrow guesting that's considered one of the most memorable in TV history.
Honey. Honey, wake up. You won't believe the dream I just had.
In the 6th year, the show went 8 years. In the 6th year, we were at a Christmas party, and I said to my wife, Jenny, I said, I think this is the last year of the show. And right away, she said, well, if this is the last year, you ought to end it in a dream sequence and wake up in bed with Suzanne.
All right, Bob. What is it?
Well, I was an innkeeper in this crazy little town in Vermont.
Yes, that's Suzanne Plachette, Bob's TV wife from his first sitcom, revealing the whole series was just a dream. That final shot was a closely guarded secret.
Even the crew, they went to dinner, and we said, oh, we've added a scene. So, you know, camera, you shoot this way, you shoot that way. Oh, yeah. So they didn't even know about it.
Bob continued to do stand-up shows and even did a couple of movies during his time away from TV. But it didn't take long for him to find a live studio audience again. In 1992, he made his return with Bob.
I've always had a gift for titling shows. I did a show in '61 called The Bob Newhart Show. It was a variety show. Then Bob Newhart Show, then Newhart, then Bob. And the next series, which I'll be doing in my 90s, will be called The.
But this show was different from anything Bob had done before. For starters, he was a cartoonist with a family.
Dad, you created a comic book? I didn't know you used to be interesting.
I actually have a daughter. I actually, apparently, after the success of the other 2 shows, finally learned how to have children. Late in life, you know, when I say, well, honey, here's what I would do. I've never said that in a series before, so it really is, I mean, I've said it in real life a lot of times, but it's the first time in a series I've ever done.
Bob also cast longtime friends in cameos on the show, like the Bob Newhart Show's Bill Daly and Newhart alum Tom Poston. Betty White signed on as Bob's boss in season 2.
I'm a newborn baby, Bob. Spank my little rear and watch me go.
Metaphorically, of course.
I'm trying to remember this man's last name. I know his first name because, you know, it's on the front of all the books. Newhart. That's right. That's what it is.
Bob the series was canceled after 2 seasons, but Bob the comedian was almost philosophical about its demise.
A decision was made to show the American public a Bob they had never seen. And actors, we call it stretching. And I found that actors should only stretch in exercise videos. They shouldn't stretch in front of anybody else because the public, they don't care whether you're stretching or not. So we gave them a Bob they had never seen, and they came back with a very resounding, we don't want to see a Bob we've never seen. Bring that other guy back, the one we like. So I learned my lesson, and I'm not stretching.
Well, actually, Bob stretched one more time in 1997 with the sitcom George and Leo. And if you're thinking Bob finally moved away from using his own name to title his shows, think again. George is his real first name.
The one and only Mr. Bob Newhart!
We do this in front of a live audience. Judd did all of his, I'd done all of mine in front of a live audience. It's just, that's the way you do it. Laugh track is stupid. I mean, I'm offended by it. You know, I mean, a guy walks in the door and says hello and says,
Bob starred as George. Judd Hirsch was Leo in this comedy of opposites. The two become in-laws when their kids get married. And yes, that's Jason Bateman as Bob's son.
Oh, that's a perfect version of my signature.
Yeah, I mastered it back in high school. I can also do you on the phone. Yeah, Ted is sick today. Yeah, bye-bye now.
It's not bad.
The idea of Bob Newhart and Judd Hirsch handling a grandchild is, puts a smile on anybody's face.
Look at her again. I had the same reaction when I first met him.
The show only ran for 22 episodes, but once again, Bob made sure to reunite with some old friends, bringing some of the Bob Newhart show cast together one more time on the last series he ever starred in.
Well, good for you, Bob.
Not easy to admit you have a problem.
He called me Bob. Didn't even realize he called me Bob. But the man's getting along in years, and it's to be excused. We're shooting here.
Don't excuse me, Bob. It's okay. I'll just take it. That's okay if that's the way he has to work to get laughs these days. It's okay. I'll suffer.
The art in making it appear to be yourself, and the art is in making it not appear to be acting. But when they're not your words, and 3 cameras are aimed at you, and you try not to bump into furniture, then it's acting.
But Bob wasn't just a TV comedy pioneer.
Yes, I raised Buddy.
Coming up, from Papa Elf to Professor Proton, how Bob became a pop culture icon.
Thank you, Sid. He's such a national treasure.
And action.
Buddy, are you okay?
I'm sorry, Papa. Just need some alone time.
Bob Newhart brought his wit and charm to the big screen, winning over a whole new generation of fans with movies like Elf. The 2003 film became an instant Christmas classic and is still one of the highest-grossing holiday movies of all time.
Santa's sleigh.
If you're gonna help me make it fly. I have 2 boys, and Will was my son. I just treated him as I would a son.
Yeah, Bob, I just tried to, take advantage of all my time with Bob.
Buddy, I think there's something I probably should tell you. I didn't put in for the tights. At the end of a movie, you can always put in for wardrobe, but I didn't care if I ever wore them again.
That same year, Bob got a crash course in designer fashion as Elle Wood's doorman in Legally Blonde 2.
All day long, I felt like white open-toed shoes after Labor Day.
I hate that feeling. Whatever that means. I read the script. I liked the script, and it was a chance to work with Reese.
Thank you, Sid. Bob Newhart, he's such a national treasure. I found myself just listening to him.
Coming through. Pardon me.
Back in the 70s, Bob lent his iconic voice to the Disney animated film The Rescuers and its sequel in the 90s.
Bianca!
Have your grandchildren, have they seen The Rescuers?
Oh, yeah. That's required, whether they like it or not, yeah.
Bob Newhart, everybody.
Archie, it's time to start the show. Now stop that.
You hear that?
No.
Between movies and guest roles, Bob kept busy in his 70s and 80s, appearing on shows like ER, which earned him an Emmy nod.
I'm a 71-year-old man who's going blind. It's the first intentionally dramatic role that I've done.
There was also a 3-episode arc on Desperate Housewives.
Why was she hitting you?
I threw a book at her.
Morty?
It came totally out of the blue, and my manager came to me and said, they want you on Desperate Housewives.
But it was Bob's recurring role on The Big Bang Theory that would lead to a big career first.
It's really you.
That was the first person that we've ever had that I really thought, oh my God, you exist, you know? He's like an icon. No, literally, he is an icon to me.
Professor Proton, it's an honor to meet you.
Is he dangerous?
I love him so much. I love him so much. I love him so much.
I do too.
When I walked on that set, it was home.
In 2013, Bob guest starred as Sheldon's TV idol, Professor Proton.
Chuck Lorre and I, we'd been talking about doing various shows. I said, Chuck, number one, Big Bang Theory, because it's so well written. And so Chuck said, okay, you got it.
I remember when we shot your first scene on Bang, and we had to stop the scene. The audience just stood up and went crazy when they realized that was you.
He couldn't get a word out because they all just kept applauding and applauding, and he was crying.
I'm awake, right?
And the Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series goes to... Bob Newhart!
First of all, my wife of 50 years. Which just proves that there are long marriages in show business. It's heavier than it looks.
It's heavier than it looks?
Yes.
Yeah, you never got the whole one?
No, I never got the whole one. Standing ovation, that really threw me. That was like, I wasn't prepared for that. It was emotional. It was emotional.
Hard to believe that despite all of Bob's sitcom success and after 6 previous nominations, this was his first and only Emmy win.
When I saw the Emmy, and it was about to be handed to me, it was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have one of those things.
Bob would return to The Big Bang Theory several more times and even earned 2 more Emmy nods.
Oh, great, this again.
Is this heavy?
Oh, this is my own.
Oh.
I have to get into wardrobe in a few minutes. If we could kind of speed it up.
Yeah, definitely.
His final appearance was in 2018, marking one of the last times we would see Bob on primetime TV.
Whatever you do, don't order the Reuben. I miss the live audience. I can't describe the feeling. People are laughing, and you're enjoying it, and they're enjoying it, and you, in your mind, you just say, this is great. This is just great.
Still ahead.
How did you meet your wife?
Fixed up on a blind date by Buddy Hackett.
Bob's romance with the love of his life, Jenny, and why he almost gave up on following his dream.
There were times when I thought to myself, boy, you really screwed up your life.
Bob Newhart, A Legacy of Laughter, will continue. This is CBS.
I'd love to stay, but I think I'd better walk over to the motel.
Okay, see you later, Mom. What do you remember about your mom and dad?
Dad and I were not really close, and that's not unusual among comics. It becomes, well, now maybe Dad will notice me.
Herb, say something to your boy.
There's my pie, boy.
Was there a point where you think you finally pleased him?
I think so, yeah. I think there was a time in Chicago, the Bob Newhart show was in syndication, and it hadn't come to Chicago yet, and he kept calling up the station saying, when's the Bob Newhart show gonna be on? So I finally broke through with that.
There, you win.
Bob was born in 1929 in a suburb of Chicago as George Robert Newhart.
Were you the funny kid in school?
I was the guy in a group, and I would turn to the next guy and I'd say something funny, and he'd start laughing. I'm still doing it. I think that's what I still do.
Bob would go on to get a college degree in business management before enlisting in the Army. He served as a clerk during the Korean War and afterwards attended law school, but left without a degree.
There were times when I thought to myself, boy, you really screwed up your life. I mean, because my friends were all, they were attorneys and accountants and doctors, and they were all getting married and buying homes, and I was taking these part-time jobs, you know, and but it worked out. It worked out.
Some people wonder if it isn't unusual for an accountant to become a comedian. It's unusual for a good accountant to become a comedian. I was a very poor accountant.
Yes, everything changed in 1960 when he recorded that now famous set.
Mr. Bob Newhart.
The success was instant, and Bob didn't just book stand-up gigs. His first film was the 1962 war movie, Hell is for Heroes.
Sergeant, you don't understand. I was sent to clerk typist school. That's all I've ever done in the Army was type.
It was that same year that Bob first met his lifelong love, Ginny.
Ginny she's a very funny person. In the 42 years we have never had a fight.
What's wrong with you?
I know. I tried to do that with a straight face.
How did you meet your wife?
Fixed up on a blind date by Buddy Hackett. Buddy Hackett said,
he said, Bobby, he said, you're Catholic, right? I said, yeah, buddy, I'm Catholic. Okay, I gotta go for you.
And I really didn't know who he was. I'd heard the name, but I didn't have his albums. And I didn't really know what he did until he was doing the television show.
Ginny shared that on American Masters in 2005. And you may not know this, but she was actually born into showbiz. Her father was actor Bill Quinn, who appeared in films like The Birds and Twilight Zone the movie, and even guest starred on Newhart.
What's going on?
They're finally getting married, that's what's going on.
Ginny and Bob would get married in 1963, 1 year after they met.
Ginny, she said to me, like, Bob, would you go clean out the dog run? And I'll say, do you think Clark Gable was asked to clean out the dog run? And she will say, you're no Clark Gable. She insisted we try to live as normal a life as we could under the circumstances, and we did. You know, I was dragged along kicking and screaming because I wanted to be treated like a star, but she wouldn't have any of that.
Yeah, Ginny had no problem keeping Bob grounded, but she was also his biggest supporter.
she always reads everything that I'm going to do, because really her advice has been very helpful. I mean, she knows me better than anybody. She cuts right to the bone, and she's been right time and time again. Oh, God, if she sees this, we don't have to make that part of it, do we?
Ginny was also there for the tough times. In 1985, Bob was rushed to the ER after developing a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. The years of smoking had caught up with him. He was diagnosed with secondary polycythemia, an overproduction of red cells. Doctors ordered him to quit smoking. Another challenge for the couple? Early on in his career, Bob struggled to pay the bills.
It frightened him. It frightened him a lot. He used to run to the mailbox all the time, waiting for that check for the last thing, because we were always up against the gun.
What's a perfect day for you nowadays?
See my kids, the grandkids. Jenny and I, we sit and we watch movies at night. Comedians' marriages tend to laugh. There's something about laughter and the length of a marriage.
Together, the couple had 4 children and 10 grandchildren. And you can bet the proud grandpa was excited to share his Christmas classic.
To see their grandfather as an elf, it's going to be very interesting to see their reaction. You want to give me a hand with that?
You want me to help?
Oh, he was wonderful. He was so fuzzy and warm and just like he is a grandfather.
Nothing like he really is, that's what she's trying to say. Puppy wants to see you. Great part of being a grandfather and a grandmother is you can just leave, you know. It's like, oh, look at the time.
In 2023, Bob and Ginny celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary just 3 months before she passed away after battling a long illness.
The one thing I regret was when I first enjoyed the success of the record album and the Sullivan shows, that Ginny and I weren't married so that we could have enjoyed that together. But I can't change that, but that's one thing I feel sorry about.
Coming up.
My daughter called. He said, well, the people are calling in, they're going crazy. on the internet that the guy looks like you.
Bob's doppelganger on the football field, plus the late-night gig that got away.
They were trying out host. I didn't know it at the time, and I was a blithering idiot.
Somebody called me up and they said, look, Don Rickles is looking for a best friend. and none of us want to do it with you.
And look what America did. Made him the biggest thing in the world, and now I just carry his books.
Fellow comedian Don Rickles was one of Bob's closest friends, and many consider the pair Hollywood's real-life odd couple.
We have a great chemistry together. We are completely different, and yet we're very much alike. Both wives want to do the same thing. Spend, spend, spend.
I didn't start out in stand-up. I started out as a ventriloquist, and my very first dummy was a dummy named Don.
What's the worst thing you can say about Bob?
He's a wonderful guy. What am I going to tell you?
Thank you very much. I love you, Donald. I love you.
We were opposites, you know, but we had a great time together and traveled together, laughed together. That statue of Don Rickles, it was almost lifelike. That was Don Rickles.
Bob's kids called Don Uncle Don, and Bob was Uncle Bob. With their wives, they traveled the world, sharing some of their personal videos in the 2023 documentary, Bob and Don, A Love Story.
On the sea of triumphs we will swing along Broadway. Dance!
You said the two of you were brothers of the heart. What did that mean?
We both had the same values. I'm Catholic, Don was religious. We'd celebrate the Jewish holidays. They'd celebrate Catholic holidays, Christmas, and we'd do caroling here.
In 2017, at the age of 90, Don passed away. For Bob, things would never be the same.
I still think about him. Up until Don passed, he lived about a block away. I could walk over and get insulted and then...
That's a nice suit, Dick. You wear that, and in 8 years it'll come back in style.
Don once guest starred as a late-night talk show host on Newhart. But did you know that Bob almost became one in real life? Yeah, he filled in on The Tonight Show when Johnny Carson was in contract negotiations.
I did 3 weeks in New York. They were trying out host. I didn't know it at the time, and I was a blithering idiot. I mean, that was after 3 weeks, and the man did 50 years.
Over his career, Bob filled in on The Tonight Show 87 times. He also hosted SNL twice.
I hosted 15 years ago in 1980, and apparently made such an impression on them. They said, boy, we got to have this guy back as soon as possible.
And back in the 60s, he even performed for Queen Elizabeth at the Royal Variety Show. But all the notoriety never went to his head. In fact, he was always just a guy from the Midwest and a lifelong Cubs fan.
Washburn strikes out and the game is over. You bum!
In 2015, Bob's love for sports took an unexpected turn during the National College Championship football game, thanks to a ref that was his doppelganger.
I was watching the game. My daughter called and she said, Dad, turn on the game. I said, well, I got it on. He said, well, the people are calling in, they're going crazy on the internet that the guy looks like you. I woke up this morning and my wife had run off with him.
Still ahead.
What do you think is the most important decision you've made in your career?
Bob Newhart in his own words, and the legacy he leaves behind.
What I get more and more now is thank you for all the years of laughter, and my answer is the truth. It was my pleasure. I had to flip a coin one day and decide whether I wanted to go into comedy or bank robbing, and came out tails, and tails was comedy, so that's what I did.
Son of a gun, we're going to have big fun, Emily.
Here we are. This is Newhart Street. This was your stage.
That's right. This is stage 17. I spent 6 years
here doing the Bob Newhart show, and then 8 years doing Newhart. So I spent 14 years on this lot and on this very stage.
He is undoubtedly a TV legend, but deep down, Bob Newhart always thought of himself as a stand-up comic first. A job he was still doing in his 90s that he started doing in his 30s.
How fast were you going when Mr. Adams jumped from the car? 75?
That's where I started. So I can't ever imagine not doing stand-up. But I loved the TV shows. I mean, the TV, we had it down, you know, it was a normal life. I wasn't on the road all the time, and I would drive the kids to school in the morning, and my wife would pick them up at night and in the afternoon. It was a normal life, so I loved that about it. It was great writing, and I loved the cast. It was a fun time.
I feel so good, I'm going to take the afternoon off.
With his unique observational humor, inherent sense of timing, and uncanny ability to get a laugh by doing almost nothing, Bob inspired a generation of comics and leaves behind an unmatched legacy of laughter.
Tonight, I have placed beloved TV icon Bob Newhart in an airtight container with exactly 3 hours worth of air.
So what is the secret of your 50 years in show business?
I don't know. I really didn't expect it to last this long. It happened so suddenly, and I just assumed 5-6 years it was going to be over. I never thought it was going to go this far. Career-wise, the high would be PBS. They designated me an American Master. Now that's something that I never thought. I don't think of myself as American Master.
I was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame, and that was very special.
This is it's a great treat. The only other time I was ever inducted in anything, I had to take off all my clothes.
Of course, the Mark Twain Award for comedians.
We have a saying, you can take the boy out of accounting, but you can't take accounting out of the boy. It's not a very funny saying, but
it's been a great life.
But it's Bob's humility and deep love of family that truly defined his character.
What do you think is the most important decision you've made in your career?
The woman I married. That was easy.
When you look back on your illustrious career, what moment do you think will resonate the most with you?
Oh, there's so many. My marriage, the kids, things outside the business, really. When it's all done, it's all about family and friends. It's been a great life. It's just, making people laugh it's wonderful. I'm hoping that when, it's time to go upstairs, hopefully go upstairs, that, the St. Peter will say, what did you do? And I said, and I'll answer, I made people laugh. Yeah. And he'll say, get in that real short line over there.
How do you want yourself to be remembered?
As a good person. I can't ask for much better than that.
And who gave us all so many laughs.
Well, it was my pleasure.